On behalf of Women Lead Congress, I warmly welcome you to our Ethical AI and Leadership Series Part 2. At Women Lead Congress, our vision is clear: to reimagine, redesign, and refine the future with AI, where women and men lead together ethically, inclusively, and collaboratively, shaping resilient societies and sustainable global progress. Today's theme is both urgent and timeless. Trust is the new currency in the era of AI. In the industrial age, power came from capital. In the information age, power came from data. But in the AI age, power comes from trust. Trust in systems, trust in algorithms, trust in governance, trust in leadership. Artificial intelligence is no longer experimental. It is embedded in healthcare, finance, national security, education, hiring, and governance. The real question is no longer, can we build intelligent systems? But the question is, can we build trusted systems? Because without trust, innovation collapses. Without ethics, intelligence becomes risk. And without responsible leadership, technology becomes unstable. This is why today's dialogue matters. We are honored to have with us distinguished global thought leaders who are not only technologists but ethical architects of the future. Let us begin this important conversation. I would like to invite Dr. Mike Smith, who is founder and president of Smith Research and Development USA. Dr. Mike, kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Sheeba, and good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Dr. Mike Smith from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm really excited and thankful to be here today. Just as a brief background, I did 26 years in the U.S. Air Force, and at the height of my career, I was honored to serve as the first sergeant for the Air Force Thunderbirds and travel the world doing air shows. After that, I transitioned and became a senior corporate leader in a Berkshire Hathaway energy company, where I was able to work with Warren Buffett and Greg Abel for about 10 years. Along the way, I got my PhD in organizational psychology, started my own business in coaching, consulting, and speaking. And I've been married to my beautiful wife for 34 years. We have two kids who are grown and out of the house and two beautiful granddaughters. And again, I'm so excited to be here and thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to hearing from my colleagues as well.
Thank you, Dr. Mike, for great introduction. I would request now Mr. Van Eiseman to introduce himself. Please.
Thank you, Sheeba, and thank you for my colleagues here. My name is Van Eiseman, as Sheeba said. I'm author of a book called The Mobile Era of Intent, which is 6 Pillars for Intent-Driven AI, which is really about how to tell the difference between AI that enhances human agency or AI that exploits it. I'm founder and president of Your Agent Group, where I work with enterprise CEOs and their organizations to align AI deployment with business strategy, governance, and trust. I spent 30 years leading digital transformation across healthcare, telecom, financial services, retail. Right now, AI is being deployed faster than anyone can evaluate whether it serves human intent or redirects it. Without that shared language for evaluation, there's no conscious choice. It's just momentum at that point. So that's where my focus is, providing diagnostic criteria to evaluate that are missing from those decisions. I'm glad to be here with this group. I'm glad to be on this dais with this panel And I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you, Mr. Van. Now I would request Dr. Sergei Kladko, Head of Laboratory for Applied Digital Ethics at NEMARC University, to introduce himself.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sheeba. Hello, everyone. So that's a great honor and a great pleasure for me to be here with you today. So, as Dr. Sheeba said, I'm the head of the Laboratory for Applied Digital Ethics at NEMARC University. I'm also the founder and scientific director of the School of Digital Ethics and the guest editor of a Springer Nature special issue. Well, maybe just, yeah, it was last month I was appointed the co-chair of the International Expert Council of AI Ethics. My work focuses on applied AI ethics, bias mitigation, and ethical governance of AI system. I was trained in philosophy, linguistics, and law, and I hope that it really helps me to bring a strong interdisciplinary and cross-cultural perspective in my academic studies and my practical projects. I have also contributed to UNESCO Future of Education initiatives and regularly curate AI ethics tracks at international conferences. I'm really fascinated to be here with you today, and I'm looking forward to contributing to the most fruitful discussion we will have today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much for great introduction. Hi, Alina. Can you please introduce yourself? Alina is a founder of Unique Bold You. Please, Alina, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Alina Timofeeva. It's very great to be here with you today. I'm very passionate about the topic of AI, humanity, and also, how this interlinks with the women agenda. And I know that we are close to the International Women's Day, so I'll be talking a little bit on this topic. I focus on two big things. So number one, I'm a senior advisor in technology and data and AI, having worked at Oliver Wyman, KPMG, and Accenture with some of the biggest brands globally. And the second thing, I'm a media voice around the same topics, very much advocating for the ethical use of AI, for closing the gender gap around AI. So I sit on board of the Chartered Institute for IT, which is an entity within the UK between the regulator, the education sector, and the government, essentially, advocating for the national agenda around AI, but some of the other topics around, education for the children, the female agenda and beyond. And currently I am based in Saudi Arabia. So I work globally, but I'm very much focused in helping the Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia, where again, there is a big topic around women empowerment and AI. So I'm very happy to be here today, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Alina. Thank you so much for a great introduction. And that's how we will move towards our first round, where we will start our talk with Dr. Mike Smith in regards to the trust and governance in autonomous AI systems. As artificial intelligence becomes increasingly autonomous and embedded into institutional decision making, the concept of trust becomes central to the governance. My question to Dr. Mike is, what does trust practically means in the context of AI systems and governance? How can leaders ensure that innovation does not outpace ethical safeguard? And is trust in AI primarily technical, regulatory, or cultural? Dr. Mike, please carry on.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the time on this topic because as a global executive leadership coach, I coach senior leaders all over the world in diverse industries and just different demographics. And one of the common themes through all of that around the world is this issue of AI and specifically trust, right? How do we instill the trust between leadership and employees, between organizations and customers? And really, your first question, right? What does trust practically mean in the context of AI systems and governance? So I think, again, from my perspective and my experience, trust when it comes to systems and governments around the use of AI to support the organization and the mission really boils down to, are we doing the right thing in the right way for the right reason at the right time, right? The systems and the governance are the guardrails that we need to put in place to actually be able to channel and leverage the tools and the benefits of AI in a way that serves not only our organization and our people, but again, the customers as well. So when that is done in an ethical manner, the systems and the governments, again, are established for the right reason to supplement and to steer the use of AI. That's what starts to build trust in that arena, right? Everyone understands we're doing this thing the right way for the right reason, and it is going to provide a benefit internally and externally. Your next question about how can leaders ensure that innovation does not outpace the ethical safeguards. And this is really where we start to get into one of the key aspects of leadership as we go into and continue to evolve in this new AI area is really staying in touch with the soft skills of leadership, right? Being present, being engaged, knowing your people, being transparent, communication, and vulnerability are just some of the things that leaders really need to display and to step into so that we can allow the ethical safeguards to stay in place. It can be really easy to be excited, and I think Van is going to speak to this, but it can be really easy to get excited about the evolution and just the amazing tool that AI is, right? But we can't allow that to become a distractor, right? We need to, again, leverage that and make sure we're doing it the right way to keep those ethical safeguards in place. So the innovation and the creativity coupled with trust. And then one of my taglines, right? Meaningful change through intentional actions, right? It has to be meaningful and it has to be intentional. And when we keep those things in mind, that is what will allow us as leaders in whatever industry you're in to maintain those ethical safeguards for the protection of all. And then finally, your last question is trust in AI primarily technical, regulatory, or cultural? And I would say from a leadership perspective, the primary trust area has got to be cultural, right? So within your organization, your industry, your geographical location, the business landscape that you are in, how are we collectively as leaders creating a culture? And fundamentally, culture is two things, right? Belief and values. You can look at many definitions of culture out there, and that's the two words that you'll see appear again and again, right? Beliefs and values. So, how are we as leaders creating the space culturally where AI, the use of AI, and the way we leverage it to supplement what we're doing, how are we rolling that into our culture where people really hit the two B's, right? They believe in what they're doing and they feel like they belong. Right. So I know that was a lot, and hopefully I hit some important points there, but I really think that as leaders, we have full control over the ability to create trust in this new, ever evolving, ever changing AI era. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, for great takeaways because the very crucial point which you have mentioned to embed the trust into the culture of organization is really crucial for all organizations and for all of us to take care of this thing and the meaningful change through intentional actions. This is amazing takeaway from your talk. Let's proceed to Dr. Sergei Gladko. Dr. Sergei, as we know that ethical AI is often discussed conceptually, but organizations struggle to translate principles into operational systems. So, my question to you is how can organizations translate ethical AI principles into measurable governance structures? What mechanism ensure that AI ethics is embedded into daily decision making rather than remaining a policy document. What leadership competencies are essential for maintaining ethical oversight in AI driven organizations? Dr. Sergei, please answer these questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sheeba. So, from an applied perspective, the real challenge today is not defining AI principles, as most organizations already know them very well. The real difficulty is turning those principles into operational discipline. For me, every ethical value needs three concrete elements. So, clear metrics, a responsible owner, and a review mechanism. For example, let's take fairness. It can't remain a general commitment. It has to be translated into measurable indicators like defined bias thresholds, disparity ratios, performance triggers. And when those limits are exceeded, that should automatically lead to review and corrective actions. The same applies to transparency. It's not just about saying, okay, we're transparent. It's about documenting models properly, using explainability tools in practice, and of course, ensuring traceability throughout the system. In real life business, if something isn't measurable, it usually isn't managed. Well, I remember it from the very first steps when I was doing in business. At the same time, metrics alone are not enough. They need to be embedded across the entire AI life cycle, from data collection and model testing through deployment into ongoing monitoring, including drop detection and incident response. Ethics should travel with the system from design all the way to its retirement. Structurally, that requires clear oversight, named risk owners, regular audits, reporting lines that actually reach leadership, frameworks like NIST AI risk management frameworks or ISO 42001 can provide structure, but governance only becomes real when it influences incentives. When ethical performance affects project approval, funding decisions, or leadership evaluation, ethics shifts from aspiration to institutional behavior. And that, I believe, is the transition organization that any organization must make. Regarding your second question about embedding ethics into daily decision making, that's a good issue. How do we prevent ethics from becoming just a PDF document sitting somewhere on the website? Well, it's common practice, regretfully. In my view, three things make this difference. So first, ethics should be built directly into workflows. At key stages, when defining the problem, sourcing data, or deploying a system, teams should pause and go through structured ethical checks. For example, have we tested bias? Do we need some human oversight here? Can this system be explained to the people affected by it? And this should not be optional. It needs to be a mandatory part of the development process. When ethical checkpoints when they're integrated into existing workflows, let's put it like this, they start shaping real decisions rather than sitting outside them. Second, organizations need shared literacy. Ethics cannot live only within compliance or legal departments. This is a big tragedy with AIX today, because actually it was captured by lawyers. I didn't say this, okay? Product managers, engineers, and executives all need a practical understanding of social impact, ideally through case-based training and real-world examples. When people understand their results in concrete teams, ethics becomes part of their professional judgment. It's not just a formal requirement. That's a really big problem. And third, there must be real accountability and self-escalation. Responsibility needs to be very clear assigned, and employees must feel safe raising concerns. If people are afraid of negative results for speaking up, well, which governance will work? Governance doesn't fail loudly, it fails silently. You don't hear it, but then it cracks. Total ruin. And again, incentives matter. When ethical criteria are part of performance reviews or project approvals, ethics becomes embedded in daily operations rather than appearing as external control. So ultimately, it's about embedding checkpoints, building shared understanding, assigning responsibility, and protecting dissent. That's how ethics becomes habit rather than documentation. And your third question about the leadership competences. Well, I would highlight four qualities here. So, first of all, system thinking. AI decisions affect legal risks, reputation, social impact, and technical performance. Well, and what is interesting, everything is done simultaneously in one punch. Leaders need a holistic view, not just technical detail. It should be systematic awareness. Second, which is very important in my opinion, it's moral courage. There will be moments when moving fast is very, very tempting. Well, especially in business, we understand that time is money. And okay, who cares about all this ethics when your competitor will forget about it and will be the first in the race? Well, responsible leadership sometimes means slowing down, asking harder questions, or delaying deployment. Then, accountability. For me, this is the most important thing. Ethics cannot be delegated entirely to technical teams. Leadership must take ownership and be visibly responsible for how our systems are governed. And finally, humility and adaptability. AI evolves extremely quickly, and that's why AI ethics exists. We do not replace law, we just help law. No one can predict all the consequences. Ethical leaders must be open to review learning and adjustment, especially in a global environment when expectations differ across cultures and regulatory systems. In the end, I would like to say that ethical AI leadership is about balancing competences with consciousness. And the balance, this is what really builds long-term trust. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Sergei, for great insights and knowledge about the ethical AI arena. Especially the greatest takeaway from your talk is being pause is the greatest trait for a leadership to execute the intelligent systems or AI systems. Moving ahead to our third speaker, Dr. Van Eisman. Actually, we know that technology alone does not create trust. Leadership, intent, and organizational culture play a decisive role. So, from your view, Dr. Van, can trust in AI is engineered or must it be earned culturally within organizations? And how should executives balance innovation, speed with ethical maturity? Additionally, what are the long-term risks if trust is compromised in AI development? Mr. Van Eisman, please carry on.
Right. Thank you, Sheeba. First off, you asked, can trust be engineered or earned culturally, right? My honest answer is really neither. Mostly because if organizations are asking this question at all, most are doing it really without the means to evaluate their impact. You can't engineer trust any more than you can will it into an organization's culture, especially if you don't have a way to assess whether your systems are honoring the trust users have placed in them or taking advantage of them. Because trust isn't a binary resource, right? It's a conditional relationship shaped continuously by decisions. So I'd frame it this way. Three things. Does the system give users meaningful control over what it learns about them? Can they contest decisions that don't serve their goals? Can they enter or leave the relationship without giving away their digital sovereignty, right? So those are measurable design questions, not business cultural aspirations. I think culture is super, super important, and I agree with Dr. Mike that the culture of an organization must foster trust. That's with any process or organizational change and things like that. one core pillar that I've defined is called trust-centered design, and it's not my word. I think it's universal, but it evaluates along three dimensions: transparency that enables genuine control, um, incentive alignment through architecture, not just policy alone, right? Um, and reversibility when systems get it wrong. Is there a recourse for the user? So when organizations evaluate and measure their deployments against those dynamics, I think the engineered versus earned debate really resolves itself because you're no longer debating philosophy, this or that. You're simply assessing outcomes. Your second question, uh, panel, was about how do or how should executives balance innovation speed with ethical maturity? Um, I, uh, I think this is a really important thing as well, and I would reframe the question a little bit because the assumption that speed and responsibility are opposing forces isn't quite the framing I'd give. I think that tension gives executives permission to treat responsibility as friction, something that slows down real work. But what's actually happening is that organizations are making those deployment decisions without really knowing what those decisions produce beyond performance metrics. Um, a system can hit every benchmark and still be redirecting human attention towards outcomes that serve the platform, not the person using it. So I don't feel the shift is from fast to slow. I'm not arguing for slowing down. I think it's from uh, unconscious to conscious. Um, and what that means is, do you know whether the system preserves your user's ability to understand, contest, and redirect what it does? Or are you optimizing for adoption metrics, attention metrics, and hoping that magically trust takes care of itself? And that's not really an ethical question, but it's a strategic one, right? So, and the organizations that I think figure out the difference between enhancement and extraction at the decision point, not after the damage report, right, are the ones that are going that won't be rebuilding trust as currency that they didn't realize that they were squandering, right? So I think that's a really important distinction there. Last question is, what are the long-term risks if trust is compromised in AI development? I think the long-term risk that concerns me most isn't that trust erodes. I think it's that the conditions for rebuilding it just disappear. Um, Trust can be broken in a single deployment decision. We've seen it. We read about it on daily headlines. But what makes it dangerous is the decisions that organizations, I think, take after that. Um, Deployment decisions harden into infrastructure. Infrastructure becomes the default, and then defaults become the thing nobody questions. So you don't just lose trust, you lose the organizational ability to recognize what caused the loss in the first place because the system that produced it is now treated as permanent. And this is why the window for conscious choice matters. Right now, as I mentioned in my intro, AI systems are being built that determine whether billions of people encounter technology that adapts to their thinking patterns and serves their goals, or technology that predicts their behavior to influence their decisions. Um, that's not a future risk. That's a architectural choice happening right now. And every day that choice gets made without a shared vocabulary, that architecture hardens and is harder to reverse.
Thank you, Dr. Van, for great takeaways. The crucial point which you have mentioned is, and which we all must keep always in our mind, is trust is conditional relationship. It cannot be re-engineered. And trust-centered design has three main pillars, which is transparency, center of alignment, and reversibility. Thank you so much, Mr. Van. Moving ahead to Miss Alina Timofeeva. Miss Alina, as we know that AI transformation systems and industries leadership must ensure that technology remains fundamentally human-centric. So my question to you is, will inclusive AI help to address institutional and societal inequalities or deepen them? The second question is about AI gender gap. How can we bridge AI gender gap? And how must leadership evolve to ensure AI systems remain human centric? Miss Alina, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I'll go question by question, but essentially they all flow one from each other. So in principle, on the first one about institutional and social inequalities, there were a couple of big reports that essentially showed the digital divide. One of them is by the United Nations, which came out last year, and it was showing that some of the less developed countries are essentially under the concern of digital colonization. And therefore, they're not using AI, or perhaps they don't even have access to AI in the same way as, say, colleagues in US or some of the more advanced countries. The second report, it just came out recently. It's a report by Anthropic, which essentially looks at the real data from the Claude conversations to measure how AI is being used in professional settings. So it's looking at different, people by gender, but also in terms of the types of professions and the nature of work that it's doing. So what is very interesting from there as a key takeaway is that it suggests that the highest exposed AI workers, as in the workers who are highly exposed to AI, they're not the minimum wage workers, but they are disproportionately older, more educated, higher paid, and also female. And this brings me to the question of the gender gap, which you asked, Ms. Sheeba, is essentially AI transformation could unlock women's participation in the technology sector, but at the same time, it could, accelerate the decline of their representation. And something which I've been working on as part of the Chartered Institute for IT, which I mentioned before, is the studies about women, right? So if I take UK as an example, we currently have 440,000 women professionals in the IT, roughly that number, and only and that is only 22% of all IT specialists, right? And what we see in terms of the AI and broader technologies, that women are concentrated in lower influence technology roles. And also there are certain challenges which are not the family responsibilities or, caring for the loved ones, but more like biases at work or some of the structural organizational challenges, which are not allowing, women to perhaps progress within the AI workforce. So what we have seen is that there have been so many initiatives, to try to cut down the diversity gender gap, but ultimately the numbers are not growing. And we see that there is a pipeline of women, coming into the workforce, but for various reasons, they're leaving the workforce or perhaps not progressing higher. So fundamentally, the gender gap, well, I know that, it may sound like a gender gap, but it's actually a competitiveness issue for the economy and for AI economy going forward, because we see that there is a shortage of some of the talents within their AI. Some of the countries, for example, Europe is a bit behind US, right? And then there are all the additional layers of other countries who as well, want to progress as much as possible. So ultimately, my key thesis here is that the countries and the companies who want to mobilize women into AI leadership and, who want to keep them in AI have stronger competitive advantage and stronger opportunity for innovation. And I think what you asked, Ms. Sheeba, is what can we do today? Because ultimately that's the key question. And I would go into the three key things that we can do as, both as a nation and as organizations. So number one, it's about reculture, right? And, we have seen a lot of discussions in these forums around how women are important, but ultimately it's important to keep the organizations and the leaders accountable for the progress. So there can be specific representation targets to executive KPIs. There's also more like sponsorship programs in terms of empowering the women. Because as I mentioned, we don't see the women so much not wanting to contribute, but more there are certain challenges starting at mid-level in terms of progressing further. The second big thing is reskilling and upskilling. So this is not a new topic because there is a lot of conversation about AI capability development and how we can do it. But fundamentally, if you look at the workforce, you have women in technology, right? We have women who may have left technology for various reasons. It could be health, it could be family, caretaking responsibilities. It can be just the structural biases, which I mentioned. But ultimately, as part of reskilling, it can be things like return to work programs. It can be re-entry pathways to get the women back into the technology careers. And ultimately, it's redesigning the operating model within the workforce. And I guess your last question, Ms. Sheeba, was about the human-centric stuff. So similar to what was mentioned by some of my panelists, I believe that, technology is just part of the challenge, and perhaps it's only 10%, which is a challenge around technology. Yes, there is a challenge around the data, but ultimately a lot of the strategic focus should be around the people and the processes, right? And I would say probably it's 70%. It's the adoption of AI. It's developing the people, developing the processes. And, there are different questions that leaders may be asking in terms of how do you deliver the value? How are you redesigning the workflows? How are you changing the processes? What is happening with their accountability, with managing risk and their oversight? But ultimately, I think that the humans who will thrive, they will focus on something which is not the repetitive tasks and not, purely the technology skills. But as my panelists mentioned, it's the softer skills, it's things like emotional intelligence, it's things like empathy, it's things about how you work alongside AI. And ultimately, I hope that AI could be one of those technologies which is sophisticated enough so that we as humans, we still remain in a way, not purely perfect, in a way irrational and perhaps messy, but we can focus on the things like building the relationships and, creating the real world and paying attention to others and, ultimately creating this empathy and a better world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alina, for great takeaway. Actually, from your discussion, we could find out that there are greatest opportunities for women if they are adopting the technology. They are gonna upskilling themselves and reskilling themselves in AI to proceed with the pace of technological growth and gender gap, minimizing gender gap in technology. Moving ahead, you also mentioned about how can a human-centric AI work. So exactly, we must adopt technology with consciousness and empathy and emotional intelligence is the core. So greatest takeaway from all the panelists. That's where we will move towards our round two, and it is a short round where we would have a cross dialogues among our distinguished panelists. And that's how we will proceed. So, my question to all of you, anyone can take a lead. If you had to identify one foundational pillar of AI trust, what would it be? So, anyone can take a lead, Dr. Mike and Van, Alina, and Dr. Sergei, please.
Yeah, so if I could, I'll go ahead and start. But for me, I think the most important element is transparency. the foundational pillar. And the reason I say that is I think we've all been there and can experience and can relate to the fact when decisions and actions happen in a silo, right, without communication across or up and down, we're really good at painting the picture in our mind in the absence of information based on what we feel, what someone else might have told us, previous experiences, and that can cause a lot of issues, even if it's unfounded or untrue. So transparency really relates to breaking down silos and effectively communicating. Now, what that doesn't mean is, I mean, obviously, I think we all can agree that as leaders in organizations, there may be times that you can't talk about things, whether it's an NDA, proprietary, legal matters, or you honestly just don't know. But even in those instances, to keep the human element at the forefront so everyone can move along together on the same page, congruent and aligned, is to at least share some type of information. Be as transparent as you can be, again, at the right time, for the right reason, with the right group. And being transparent through those times, especially as we go through the change of the unknown and the evolution and the advancement, that will go a long way to reinforce and even strengthen trust. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. So, how about you, Alina? What do
So
you feel?
for me, I advocate a lot for the human oversight because fundamentally AI is, we see AI make mistakes. And just one of the examples recently from the stories, and it's not necessarily a mistake per se, but there was a lot of discussion around Anthropic, how it's not going to work with Pentagon on some of the military operations, or like it doesn't want code to be used for certain things, but there are reasons for those concerns. There are concerns that, AI could be used in military operations, against humanity. And of course, if you don't have enough oversight, the mistake can be really big. Of course, if it's, doing some of the simpler tasks, the impact is not as huge, perhaps, on the humanity, but we see use cases where the impact can be really huge. And something which I've been doing in my own time is studying quite a lot about military and the drones, both in the commercial and the wartime, and just to understand how big the impact can be. So I definitely advocate for the human guardrails, for the human in the loop, for even making sure that humans are there just to test the outcomes, but also to encourage the algorithms to work better with the ethics and the humanity in mind.
Thank you, Alina. Mr. Van, what is your opinion?
I think I agree with my panelists there that transparency and human oversight, I think are super foundational. I really think all of these are, but can I add another one?
Yes, please.
Because yeah, to me, those options are sort of a mixture, but mainly downstream mechanisms. They're outputs of the trust architecture that not really the foundation of it, though. To me, the foundational pillar is intent, right? So I don't think the mechanisms matter much if you haven't first determined whose intent the system serves. To Alina's point, if drones are are able to act autonomously without human oversight, that's not serving the human intent. So you can have perfect transparency into a system, like Dr. Mike said, and that's optimized to redirect human attention. You can have full accountability structures around deployment, but that might squander trust by design. All right, so the foundational pillar, it's really whether the system serves the human's goal or the platform's goal, and we've seen this with like character AI. Is it exploiting the vulnerabilities of people and connection, and human connection? So that's the evaluation I think that comes first is intent. Everything else I think is becomes a governance uh, uh, effort applied downstream.
Thank you, Dr. Van. And how about you, Dr. Sergei?
Well, that's a really interesting question because all of these elements are really deeply interconnected, yes. And okay, let me just keep the intrigue. I would choose accountability. And
Oh,
let me explain why.
yeah.
So, yeah, transparency is essential, explainability is essential, human oversight is over essential, and deregulation it's essential without saying a single word. But none of them truly build trust unless someone is clearly responsible for the outcomes. Well, transparency without accountability risks becoming just disclosure without consequences. An organization can publish documentation, share model cards, and describe processes. But if nothing happens when harm occurs, trust doesn't actually increase. Explainability without accountability can turn into just technical explanation without responsibility. We may understand how a system works, but then understanding alone doesn't guarantee any corrective action. Human oversight, very important, but it also depends on the accountability. Without it, a human in the loop can become symbolic, just present in theory, decorative, but without the authority or responsibility to meaningfully change outcomes. Even regulation ultimately relies on accountability because regulators need to know who can be held responsible when rules are violated. Trust in the end is not only about understanding how a system functions, it's about, first of all, knowing if something goes wrong, someone can be questioned and corrective actions to follow. Accountability creates incentives for transparency. It strengthens oversight. It gives regulation real weight. And from the public perspective, trust grows when people see unforeseeable consequences, not just well articulated, nice ethical intentions. Just before our very interesting workshop started, I had finished, I would say, some gargantuan work of analyzing 20 documents regarding AI ethics in different parts of the world. Yes, I decided to make some content analysis of the most widely used principle, yes, in this document. So out of 20 documents, in 95% of cases, it was accountability. So I was not alone, and I was very happy just to find this proof. So for me, accountability is a bedrock. All other pillars are indispensable, but accountability is what makes all of them real.
Thank you so much, all of you, and all your comments really helps us to understand the ethics and trust. How can we build up into as a framework? And here, one question to everyone, and let's see what you all say about it. See, in the chat box, I have written, if trust collapses in AI systems, which fails first? Can anyone answer? So it will be the combination of all our talk into single word. If trust collapses in AI system, what fails first? Technology, governance, public legitimacy, or leadership?
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, it would be the leadership. If the trust erodes, right? And Van mentioned that earlier, to try to get that back, right, after the flame's been put out can be a really, really tough uphill battle.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much for this insight. However, to my mind, public legitimacy is another thing where public belief is should not be collapsed through the wrong usage of AI and diminishing trust. So let's see, thank you so much for this reply. Let's move ahead for the last round, and then we will have a lucky draw for two winners will receive two free classes of 30 minutes from coaching session by Dr. Mike on leadership and by Mr. Van Eisman for ethical AI, who is ethical AI expert. So now let's get started for the last round and we will move to the lucky draw at last. So for this last round, every from all of you, I would request one-liner answer. So I would start with Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith, what will define ethical AI success by 2030? Your voice is not coming, Dr. Mike. You're muted.
There we go. Yeah, thank you so much. Technology is great when you know how to use it. So I would say for me, what will define ethical AI success is when organizations reach that purposeful, blended integration of the AI and the human element, which will ultimately result in that meaningful change through intentional actions. And I think we all can agree we can, change is inevitable, right? So we can change before we need to or
Yes.
because we have to. And the changing before we need to is a much easier hill to climb. So again, purposeful blended integration is what's going to define ethical AI success to me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. And Dr. Sergei, what ethical risk are we underestimating today?
Well, I would say that first of all, this is the combination of increasing autonomy and decreasing visibility. That's how I see it. So, because we're rapidly moving towards more agentic AI systems, systems that do not just assist humans, but initiate actions, make decisions, and interact with other systems with minimum oversight. Well, at the same time, many of these systems are highly complex and difficult to fully explain. The risk is not just bias or isolated error, what I would say. The risk is that we gradually become comfortable with systems, just enjoy ourselves. Yeah, and the systems acting in ways we cannot fully trace or even clearly attribute responsibility for. Great life, huh? As autonomy increases, more distance increases. And when responsibility becomes diffuse across developers, deployers, vendors, and automated agents, accountability becomes harder to enforce. That's also a systematic dimension. These systems are increasingly interconnected in finance, healthcare, well, other infrastructure. Small failures can then cascade in ways we may not anticipate. So the underestimated risk is not one dramatic AI catastrophe, whatever you read in newspapers, I see on TV. It's this very slow normalization of semi-autonomous decision making in critical areas of life. And once society adjusts its expectation downward, once we accept reduced explainability as normal, rebuilding trust, well, becomes much harder. This is how I see it.
Thank you so much. And moving to Mr. Van, what mindset shift must CEOs make immediately?
That's a great question. And what I urge CEOs to do is stop expressing AI deployment as a technology decision. It's an operating decision. What you're fundamentally changing is the relationship between your organization and really every person it touches. I think both all three of my panelists colleagues here have said the same. Whether it's leadership, whether it's accountability, whether it's the sort of human factor. Right now, I think most executives are evaluating AI on capabilities. What can it do for us? How fast can we ship? What can we show the board that it saved? Um, and I think the those leaders with the moral clarity to know what these systems should be doing, people that those leaders entrust with that have communication skills, like Alina had mentioned earlier, to articulate what intent to agentic systems that really need that human oversight, so that they can evaluate whether that system should do what it's being trained or used to do. So I think the mindset shift is CEOs that understand these things will shape their standards for their industry, and the ones who don't will find themselves managing the consequences of the decision that they didn't realize that they were making.
Thank you so much. Moving to Alina. Alina, what leadership quality will matter most in the AI era?
So I think for me, ultimately, AI hasn't shown that it thinks. It kind of more reports what has been done before, and also it accelerates human creativity, but it can't really replace it. So for me, the main quality is influence. So it's the ability to move the people, to shape the decision, to create the lasting change for the communities. And I feel that the future does not belong to those who are the most skilled, but it's to those who are most anchored, most energized, and perhaps most influential.
That's great. Thank you so much, all the distinguished speakers, for your profound insights. Let's move ahead towards our spinning wheel round, and it is most exciting round. I would request Mohammed to spin the wheel for leadership expert 30-minute coaching session. Please spin the wheel. You can share your screen so everyone would see their name, all the participant. And make sure before moving, everyone's name is here. Mr. Sergei, Zainab, NEZAR, Janani, and Sunil, Alina, and yeah, Fadwa. I hope everyone's name are here. So, and Subela Bhatia. Subela's name is not here. Here. Subela, yes, Subela. So let's get started, everyone. Fingers crossed. Who will get the leadership session from our esteemed Dr. Mike Smith? Let's get started, please. Mohammed, start. Dr. Sangeeta, you have got this free 30-minute session from Dr. Mike Smith on leadership. Thank you so much, Dr. Mike, and thank you so much, Dr. Sangeeta, for joining us. Now, let's get started for our next spin wheel. Your sound is not coming, Mohammed. So, Dr. Sangeeta, your name will not be here in this lucky draw. And now this session is for ethical AI session by Mr. Van Eiseman. It will be 30 minutes free session, free coaching session. So let's get started. Who is the winner? Let's fingers crossed. Dr. Sergey, your name is here. So congratulations, Dr. Sergey. You will get this.
Well, thank you very much. So, but I think that, well, two, well, experts in AI ethics, that would be a little bit strange. So in this case, maybe just you withdraw me from this draw, okay?
Okay, so
Yeah.
once again,
Yes, please. Yeah.
yeah,
That would be
please.
interesting, but we can just communicate
Yeah, very
face to
true,
face.
very true. So once again, who is lucky now to get ethical AI? Yes, yes. Oh, wow, Zainab. Zainab, you are the winner. So you will get 30 minutes session from Mr. Van Eisman, and we will inform you with all the details to connect with them.